welcome back to my channel Fionn Talks. Today I will be discussing Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, which is probably turning out to be the blockbuster of summer 2026. I saw it yesterday afternoon and I loved it. First I'll give kind of a bit of background. So Nolan kind of assembled a superstar ensemble cast. You have Tom Holland, Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Robert Pattinson, Zendaya, Travis Scott making an appearance. So an issue that sometimes happens when there's a big cast like this is that they kind of have chemistry issues, but here I felt there's really good chemistry between everyone. He also employed his kind of typical non-linear storytelling, which actually worked really well in this film. I really enjoyed it, even though it has been confusing in previous films like Tenet. Here I felt it worked well. It didn't really destroy my brain in any way. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I consider it a bit of a masterpiece. Has a clearly defined story, protagonist, villain, character arcs, the whole shebang. So let's jump into it. Nolan conducted a lot of research. It's obviously based on Homer's The Odyssey, and filming took place across numerous locations. If you see the film, you'll kind of see a lot of the geographical settings are quite different. In general, I think some of the scenes are absolutely spectacular. I love them, which it should be given the budget was around $250 million, making it one of the highest budgets for Nolan's films. And in general, Nolan does command quite a high budget, which is not surprising given he kind of goes all out. He kind of just swings for the fences with his films, which really makes for really just spectacular sets. I'll use that word again, spectacular. So now we'll finally jump in. In the opening scene, we learn quite a lot. So Odysseus has not yet returned from the Trojan War, even though Agamemnon has. And we're kind of here where we're in Penelope's palace, Anne Hathaway. It's assumed that Odysseus is dead. It's been that long. And just basically a bunch of rowdy suitors have taken over. And they're just trying to win over Penelope. And generally they're just causing chaos. Robert Pattinson is probably the ringleader of these suitors. He's just being a terrible person, really, just being a bit of a bully and stuff like that. Tom Holland plays Telemachus, Odysseus' son, and he just really yearns for his dad to return and deep down believes that he will. And in general, the situation is just spiraling out of control fast, and Telemachus really wants to find his dad. We kind of meet a very interesting character, Eumaeus, a servant who has poor vision, who is fiercely loyal to Odysseus and therefore Telemachus. So basically, Penelope, Telemachus, and Eumaeus are the only ones who think Odysseus will return. And then we see that Antaeus is Robert Pattinson, and he kind of discovers through the grapevine he's having an affair with Penelope's maid. And Telemachus and his mentor, who was literally called Mentor, he kind of gathers a trusted crew. They go to see Menelaus, find out about Odysseus, see if any updates, stuff like that. And Antaeus sends a crew to Sparta to kill Telemachus, which we'll get onto later. So Telemachus just ends up talking to Menelaus and Helen, just hoping to hear about his dad. Menelaus doesn't really know what happened to Odysseus, but he does recount the events of the night the Trojan horse entered, which is obviously a very famous tale in general. Kind of used a metaphor for certain things. I was watching Money Heist recently, and they referenced the Trojan horse, and we kind of see really in depth. The conditions were just terrible. Men were packed like sardines. There was kind of just human waste everywhere. Lads were drowning. They're just on the beach waiting for something to happen. Eventually, the Trojans come on horseback and confront Sinon, played by Elliot Page, whose last words are basically, "It's a gift," and he's then killed. And then we see the Trojans dragging the horse physically up into the city. They hoist it, and then in the dead of night, the Greek army kind of just pop out. The guys pop out, Odysseus, Menelaus, played by John Bernthal, I was about to say Frank Castle there. And just absolute carnage erupts. There's death, mayhem, murder, Just a lot of bad stuff going on, and we see this as a profound effect on Odysseus, because in this age there's this kind of Zeus's law where you're supposed to kind of treat people well, and this whole thing just destroyed Zeus's law. Just didn't give a crap about it basically. And he's haunted by the image of a woman who's beheaded in front of him, who is Zendaya, played by Zendaya. And we see when Zendaya appears to Odysseus, this is actually supposed to be Penelope, but she's taking the image of this woman that was beheaded in front of him just because he's just kind of got this PTSD about it. But they retrieve Helen, and then everyone's just viewed as a hero. On the way back, Menelaus and Agamemnon kind of take a direct route. Odysseus and his crew take a slower route. They're kind of optimistic. They're just gonna explore a bit, I guess. But they're optimistic they'll arrive home before their comrades, and they also encounter some interesting things along the way. So this turns out to be an absolutely enormous mistake, given it's the Odyssey we're talking about here. They run out of supplies, stop at an island, find a flock of sheep going into a cave. They decide to wait for the owner, who, in the first kind of oh crap moment, turns out to be a giant cyclops. They're trapped for a few days. The cyclops kind of picks off one or two fellas every night. Eventually they blind the cyclops and escape. And Odysseus shoots a final arrow just as they're about to escape, which is a bad decision. Cyclops appears to be communicating with someone, with the crew hypothesized to be Poseidon. And then we kind of see consequences of this. The sea gets a lot rougher. Then they find another island, and this is probably even worse. They're just really low on supplies, desperate for food and stuff. And they see a tall person, and they kind of say, "Hi, we need food, we're not going to harm you." Turns around, it's a child, a very tall child, who starts crying, and then literally armed giants come out of nowhere, and they're just they just spawn in, and they're just absolutely just want to destroy the guys, or the crew, Odysseus' crew. It's a massacre. Lots of guys die, ships are destroyed, a lot of the crew is just sliced in half, and it's just an absolute disaster. So yeah, they're kind of just back to square one again. They go to another island, there's a little bit of a mutiny. Odysseus is just kind of isolated, roaming around, while the guys, they go to a house of a woman who appears to be quite innocent, but it's Circe, she's kind of a witch. So the guys are so hungry, they're eating this thing, they're just absolutely ravenous, they're just going blah, 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 blah. But then she goes around and turns them into pigs, because her sister was turned into a crow sitting in the cage. And they're just turned into pigs basically. And Odysseus is just out frolicking, looking for some food. He kills a deer, he goes over to said deer. Deer is now a human man, so he knows something crazy is going on. He rushes up to Circe's house, has a little dialogue, susses the whole thing out, and realizes what's going on. And he kind of persuades her to turn them back. He kind of isn't turn them back. He's kind of more, persuades the word I said, and I'd go along with that. And basically, she warns him kind of what's going on, the sacrifices that are coming, the whole situation that Odysseus is in. And it's quite, at this stage, it's just getting pretty bleak for Odysseus and his team. He ends up going to Hades, and he's told that only he will return to Ithaca, which is quite tough to hear, because he's hopeful everyone that's remaining will return, even though it's quite optimistic, given what's happened so far. It's just been an absolute shambles. Sinon Shade confronts Odysseus, and it's kind of why did you die? Odysseus explains what happened, how he's proud of him. He also reveals Antony's treachery, which is Robert Pattinson, who just, I would say Pattinson's probably the villain, and he's really good in the villain role. And how he kind of manipulated Sinon into being drafted for the Trojan War. And he said, I'll look after your family, but he just doesn't do anything really. He just didn't want to fight. Agamemnon Shade reveals that his wife Clytemnestra killed him because Agamemnon sacrificed their daughter for fair seas. Clytemnestra is also the sister of Helen. So Agamemnon returned early, but it just turned out to be short-lived. His kind of reign as the war hero, I suppose. And Odysseus then has a choice: whirlpool, guaranteed death for everyone, or he goes the other way, but they're going into an area laden with monsters. They go there with monsters, guys get picked off as per usual, the standard for this film. And yeah, they arrive at another island. They kind of are met with an ultimatum. So they just need to live off the land, you know, berries, plants, all this fruit. Don't need the local livestock is basically the mission. They do have this plant-based diet for a good bit. Eventually they give in and are caught eating some cattle. And we kind of get towards the business end of the film in that the rest of the crew are killed. As soon as they set sail, Poseidon punishes them very badly. There's just the worst storm in history. Boat breaks, death. Somehow Odysseus, he washes up on an island and he's fed lotus flowers by a nymph, Calypso, kind of manipulating his brain. He kind of forgets stuff, as we see. And then we kind of get more up to speed with the present where we were at the start of the film. So we have Calypso. She eventually begins to feel pity for Odysseus. She begins to bring Odysseus' memories back, which is a big help for him because he begins to remember core points of his life. And then Calypso kind of encourages him to go and build a raft and like give himself to the sea, face the punishment of Poseidon. He does so, he falls in the water and he wakes up in Ithaca, which is quite the twist. So he kind of just goes up to Ithaca, hooded in disguise, takes the name Sinon in tribute to Sinon, who obviously sacrificed. And then we also discover that that the plot I was mentioned earlier about, so Antaeus has kind of set guys to go and kill Telemachus and Mentor. Mentor goes down, but also Odysseus ends up going there and saving Telemachus. And basically, like, Telemachus is like not bad for a beggar, because like that's the way Odysseus just kind of posing as a beggar, because you know obviously he's a legendary name, so he just kind of has to keep a low profile. So yeah, Telemachus is kind of like not bad for a beggar. And then they kind of go back to Ithaca, and essentially what happens is Argos is the old dog of Odysseus. So basically Eumaeus is just throwing puppies over that might have been excess. Odysseus saved one, Argos, and as people who have dogs would know, you can grow a very strong bond with the dog. Odysseus and Argos are just like besties. Argos recognized Odysseus. At this stage, Telemachus also recognized Odysseus as his dad. And then basically, like, he gets into the kind of, the room outside Penelope's bedroom where all the suitors are. It's just, and then he kind of lets on that he knows about Antaeus and kind of the Sinon situation. Antaeus is just furious, he just goes in a rage. And then Penelope's kind of intrigued. She invites Odysseus, or she invites Rand the beggar up for a chat. And Odysseus kind of puts on the story of Sinon. He's like, I was at Troy, I'm ashamed of what happened, breaking Zeus' law. And then he kind of manipulates the whole thing. So Penelope is now like, okay, I've lost faith in Odysseus, I'm gonna find a new suitor. She sets a test, which is interestingly, whoever can string Odysseus' legendary bow that only he could string and shoot through a bunch of axes. Everyone fails. Odysseus is like, I'll do it. Everyone's laughing, they think it's Rand the beggar. He nails it. And then the whole thing erupts into absolute carnage, epic battle. Eventually, the good guys win. Antaeus is killed. Odysseus sees his throne to Telemachus. He leaves Ithaca with Penelope. He seeks peace. And he goes to honor his dead soldiers because he he feels empathy. I think there's a big character arc from Odysseus. Like something I feel like is kind of touched on as modern wars, particularly the Iraq-Afghanistan wars, where it's like maybe this is intentional by Nolan or not, or it's Homer had it the exact same way before all these modern wars, where Odysseus has regret about the complete brutality that went on. Whereas beforehand he's probably like a macho soldier guy. But he's reflected and he's like, God, that was kind of disgusting. So I think that's what I thought of anyway, being someone who's kind of interested in all that kind of stuff. So I like the character arc there. And in general, even though it's 2 hours and 52 minutes long, I felt it flew. I really enjoyed it. In the pantheon of Nolan films, I'd say it's up there. For me, I think now The Prestige, love The Prestige, Dark Knight trilogy. Honestly, there's so many good Nolans, but yeah, I would say it's a great Nolan film. It's up there. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. And yeah, fantastic film. Recommend it. Well, if you're watching this, I'll spoil a lot, so you've probably already seen it. But yeah, recommend to your friends, your family. And yeah, thank you for watching. See you next time.